And it
from
was interesting. It's interesting though with your modality, because you're talking so much about the neuroplasticity and the mindset, but you've actually figured out a trauma healing technique and it works for both, which is so interesting because I kind of separate those two things a little bit. Like trauma work is one thing and mindset work is one thing. But the way you're describing it, you think of it as the same thing, hey?
It is the same. You can't separate it. Now, again, what is trauma? Post-traumatic stress disorder. First of all, it's not a disorder. Trauma actually is an education on how to survive in the world. If you think about it, trauma is a traumatic experience. Now, the weird thing about traumatic experiences, a little girl falls down and she knocks her front teeth out. From that point on, she thought she was ugly and no one loved her. That is a traumatic experience to a child. To move from one home to another home, a bigger home, is a traumatic experience for a child because she lost all of her friends. She lost the comfort of this. So these are traumas, but they're also education. And it's teaching us how to survive. Now, of course, if you have an abusive brother or sister or parents or whatever, or you go to school and they're bullied at school, these are traumas, but they're also educating you how to survive the world. And unfortunately, sometimes we are introduced to worlds that we don't actually like. But this is our world, and this is who we are, and this is how we're to operate. So trauma is really an emotional education to survive. And the weird thing is our brain captures it, organizes it, and replicates it in our future. And so again, there's a lot of programs out there like DNRs, for example. So first of all, they don't know how to change trauma. They don't know how to deal with trauma. So, okay, push
they
trauma
don't touch it. Yeah.
and try to be positive. Now, here's the
Exactly.
problem. Here's the problem is I got a cup full of all my abuses, hurts, and pains, and fears and phobias, and it's full, right? And they say be positive. And how are you going to put it in there if it's full of what you don't want? The problem is, it's just like dieting. If you don't change the diet, the emotional reasons why you eat, you go on a diet, and now while you're on a diet, you feel good, you're kind of losing weight, you still have the battle within you. But as soon as you go back to normalcy, all the stuff that's in there is going to show up. It's going to make you sick again. You're going to do the same thing. So my belief is, as you go inside, make adjustments inside your memories, which is neuroplasticity, update them to where you change them to what you'd like to have. And you start being from the inner world. And then you don't have to try to pretend or try to be positive, because you are positive from inside. The biggest problem is that is sometimes, like, I've worked with a lot of people with severe illnesses. I mean, you talk about the worst: Hashimoto's disease, lupus, POTS, fibromyalgia, ME. As a matter of fact, on Wednesday, I'm going to do an interview with a woman named Ronnie. Now, she came to my system in a wheelchair with an implant in her hip, so she can kind of walk. All right. So she goes see one of my practitioners that I've trained. And so she comes in a wheelchair, and 4 days later, she can kind of walk. Now, I'm doing a training in Greece, and she comes there, and I pull her up several times in the session. She bought some sessions with me. On Friday, she's dancing on top of the table.
Wow.
This is no lie. I have video proof of everything. Matter of fact, her testimonials everywhere. But it's the neuroplasticity of the mind. It's how we hold memories.
That's so interesting. And why? Do you have a theory? Because our audience is mostly ME/CFS, long COVID. Do you have a theory as to why these traumas result often in chronic illness for some people, whereas some people have lots of traumas and they don't get? Do you have a theory?
Well, there's many reasons. One, some people are very mentally and emotionally focused on the physical kinesthetic feelings, which means they can actually build on top of it. There is the hypnosis or the I call it the voodoo of this culture. And you go to the doctor says you got this disease, and then you'll never be able to walk again. You go blind and you'll be impotent. Some people believe that, and they take it, and what they do is they imagine what they say, they build and create from what is said, and then they actually produce what this is. By the way, this is all trance work, it's hypnosis work, it's self-affirmations, And when we go back and people replay bad experiences to the brain, we call the subconscious brain, we call it the intelligent idiot. That means you teach it how to use a knife, it'll cut everything up in spite of the good sense. So this part of us will stay in alignment with where we come from, even though we consciously say we don't like it, but we actually replicate it, we produce it, we think about it, we feel it, and we manifest it. And others do not. It's basically internal processing of information. And then the weird thing is our traumas could represent people. It could represent a relationship with our mean brother, our mean alcoholic mother, or abusive father, and therefore we stay in alignment with the programming. A lot of people have chronic fatigue, not chronic fatigue, but multiple chemical sensitivities. A lot of times, not all, like for example, there's a woman named Phyllis McDonald. She was a nurse, not a psychiatric nurse, but she was a nurse. And her chronic and multiple chemical sensitivity got so bad she couldn't even leave her home. She was locked in her room. Her kids couldn't come and see her. Soaps, etc., controlled her whole existence. All right. And then she started watching my trainings and started watching the videos, applying what I said. And one time she cried, calling her husband. She said, "Robert says I'm doing it to me." And again, she doesn't know she's doing it to you. All she's doing is worrying. Do you realize when people worry, they actually create a movie, create feelings and emotions of what they worry about, which is also an emotional affirmation.
Yeah, I know. It's so huge. The fear piece in this illness is so critical, but it's also so screwed up because you're sick. So of course you're going to have a lot of fear. So it's kind of self-perpetuating in a really cyclical way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've experienced too. But it's also like I talked to an expert in neuroplasticity who was talking about how different illnesses are easier to transform than others. Like chronic fatigue can be a little more difficult because it is a cellular process that's going on. That was really interesting, but I definitely see what you mean in terms of the self-perpetuating. And I can even look at indications from before I was sick of how I was always catastrophizing when I would get certain symptoms. And I think that can be quite common. I'm not going to generalize to everyone.
That's a self-hypnosis program. And here's the bizarre thing, Dr. Eric Robbins is a friend of mine. And so he's a urologist. And of course, he has clients that come in and they got areas down there that have problems. And one of the things he asked, it says, well, any abuse growing up as a child? And he says, invariably, there's always something.
Yeah, and most doctors don't look at that. Yeah.
Oh, they don't, again, they can't fix that. A psychologist can't fix that either, right?
Yeah.
And so here it is. You go to the doctor and they say, well, you got ulcers, therefore you have a bad stomach. They don't say, what in your life are you worried about?
Right.
Where are your emotional concerns? Because again, the happiness is a chemical problem. Depression is a chemical creation too. So again, the cells do naturally respond to your thinking. Right now, as you listen to this, you can stop and say, okay, do I have a happy memory? And you stop, you think about a happy memory, you feel happy, your body now cellularly will be speaking happy feelings. Now, if you have a trauma or a fear or a worry, all you got to do is stop and think about it. Your body follows that. So my entire system is modeled after this one concept. Whatever you think, your body follows. Whatever you hold in your mind, your body produces. And if you can change what's in here, which changes what's in the cup, you change your whole life in existence.
Right.
And that's really what we're after. And the problem is that people have been so emotionally conditioned by unhealthy emotionally family members or experiences or doctor traumas or school traumas or religious fears and phobias. Phyllis, her biggest programming was the horrible fear of being a little girl laying in her bed, fear of burning in hell. She emotionally conditioned her to be so afraid of the world. And then, of course, as a nurse, she sees horrible things. Guess where this goes? It goes right in here. And then all of a sudden, the emotional dynamics growing up as a child shifts from the emotions floating around in the home environment to now it's floating around in wavelengths or smells or chemical sensitivities. I see this a bunch. But again, if you go to a system and they can't change the number one cause of all problems, full stop, memories, internal representations. You change that, the cycle ends.
Yeah. And I mean, from experience, I'm agreeing with you. It's just hard when there's no scientific ability to like prove that. Obviously your proof is in the pudding in terms of your results, but do you see any way that like science could help to like actually, I don't know, is there a way we could show this in a biological sense, do you think?
Well, even with logic and science too, the problem is there's a lot of things science can't prove that is true.
Yeah.
And bowing down to the great scientific project or the scientific research issue, the problem is all research is only as good as those who are financing the research. So if you need proof outside of yourself, then the problem goes back to the same problem. My parents broke me. My parents caused me problems. And the only way I'm going to heal is science can give me the right drug, the right operation. And of course, it goes back to what is very scientifically known is that it's called the placebo effect. Now, of course, the placebo effect, you hear with a lemon in the mouth of the researcher saying this placebo is ruining our good research, which basically means people are getting a fake drug, a fake operation, and they heal. Now, what is it? Is it the sugar pill that's healing them? Is it the fake operation healing them? No, it's internal emotional processes. So scientifically has proven that the mind can heal itself in spite of a sugar pill.
Right.
Also, science has proven that you can have the right drug, the right operation, and yet you're still sick, you die.
Yeah.
So again, science has clearly proven that the mind can heal itself. So placebo means the mind's great ability to heal itself in spite of the fake sugar or the fake operation. Nocebo effect is the mind's great ability to not heal in spite of how good the drug is and how good the operation is. And many of my clients have gone to every doctor and they say, we don't know what's wrong with you, but they know something's wrong. And then, and then of course, then they go and they do an internet search and they find some disease that they think they have. And they go to the doctor and they test it and say, you don't have that. But yes, I do, because internal of the creation of it.
Yeah. And then they get in the fear cycle for sure. I've been there.
Yeah.